First though, 2-week entire national lockdown in Wales. Why? Where's the evidence it's going to work? Chris Bryant is the Labour MP for Rhondda in South Wales. He joins me now. Chris Bryant, there's no proof that a 2-week lockdown is going to make a blind bit of difference to infection rates.
That's your view, is it?
Well, it's not my view, it's scientific fact.
Go on then, prove it.
Well, if you look at the analysis from every country that has gone to a full lockdown, there is no link to decreased mortality. All this does is buy Wales some time. But for what, Chris? What are you buying time for? I don't understand.
Well, you don't seem very bright then. It's fairly simple. Our local hospitals are absolutely rammed full. At this time of year...
What are the stats? Give me the stats, because the government's putting out false stats on this.
My local ICU is 75% full.
And how does that compare to last year?
It's about double what it was this time last year.
So you've still got 25% capacity. So
yes, and it's filling very rapidly, and we now have the availability of a field hospital, which we set up as well locally. But the truth of the matter, the difficulty about the field hospitals is you've got to staff them with exactly the same people who are staffing the normal hospitals. So it doesn't really buy you much additional space. And on top of that, we've had a major outbreak in my local hospital of people contracting the virus in the hospital. So we've had about 130 cases and 35 deaths related to that in the hospital. So the real problem is that if we
So you're saying the NHS is going to be overwhelmed. That's the argument, is it? Because I'm just trying to work out what the argument is for a total national lockdown.
I don't know why you're so angry.
I'll tell you why I'm so angry. I'm incredibly angry today, Chris. You're very perceptive to pick up on that. I'm very angry because the death figures have been released by the ONS today, showing that there were 26,000 excess deaths of poor souls who died at home between March and the 11th of September because they were either too scared or not allowed to go to hospital. I passionately believe these lockdowns don't work, so I'm genuinely trying to understand
I don't
why
think you are genuinely
you're
trying.
it.
You're just shouting. It's a really tedious way of doing radio.
Well, that's your opinion. But why didn't you answer the question?
Opinion. You haven't asked the question.
Well, I did ask the question. Where's the proof that this is going to work?
Well, it's very difficult to prove into the future. However, as I was trying to explain earlier, the main thing that we're trying to do in my part of the world, in South Wales, is we're trying to make sure that the NHS isn't overwhelmed. As somebody who's had cancer in the last 18 months, I'm painfully aware of the issue you raised about what happens to people who don't go and present to their doctors because they're frightened that they might contract COVID. But the other side of that problem, and we've done very well actually locally in trying to make sure that cancer is dealt with in a completely COVID-free setting using the private sector hospitals in Cardiff. But the real danger is, of course, that if the NHS, if my local general hospital or the 3 hospitals that serve my area locally are overwhelmed and are completely full of COVID, which we're getting on for now at the moment, and then you try to add a little bit of flu, which normally comes at this time of year, there will be no space in the hospitals to deal with any other medical condition whatsoever. So I think your argument is a false one. It's not a choice between these trying to care for people who have other conditions as well and COVID. You have to deal with the COVID situation. You have to restrict the transmission of the virus if you're going to stand a chance of treating people for cancer.
Look, we disagree on this point and on that point, and there are 2 different schools of scientific thought. So it doesn't mean I'm not bright.
There aren't
it means
really.
there are actually, Chris.
There's one school of scientific thought, and then there's a load of crackpots on the other side.
Are you joking me? So you're calling Dr. Sunitra Gupta from Oxford University a crackpot? You're calling Professor Jay Bhattacharya from Stanford, one of the top professors of medicine in all of the world, a crackpot? I mean, this is actually offensive, Chris. You do understand that science has forever used herd immunity in order to deal with these coronaviruses. I really believe you need to
read herd immunity.
Yeah, and protecting the vulnerable. And I really think you should read
And
the
how do you
Great
protect the
Barrington.
vulnerable? Just take me through how you protect the
Oh,
vulnerable,
there's a
so that
whole
none of them
load of
get
ways to do it,
infected.
Chris, there's a whole load of ways to do it, and the Great Barrington Declaration spells it all out. But look,
You're a nutcase. You're a complete and utter
Oh,
nutcase, and you're dangerous as well.
Chris, do you know what? You can go off now. Get rid of this man, because actually we will not have people abusing people who have a different point of view. That is absolutely ridiculous. And that is the problem with the Labour Party, summed up right there. Summed up right there. Because I sign up to the Great Barrington Declaration, I have signed it, which is backed and created by the three of the top epidemiologists in the world, who say there is a different approach that should be taken. And I'm sorry, I will not be called a nutcase because I disagree with a damaging 2-week entire national lockdown of Wales. That to me sums up everything that is wrong with the Labour Party at the moment.